Thank you. As a composer and artist, my work comes from a place between worlds, that place we call home, that is both within and without. I was born into an artistic family, and both my parents are visual artists. My father is a Nigerian sculptor and painter, and my mother a painter and writer of Irish ancestry. From an early age, I had to learn to balance cultures and carve out my own sense of identity. Music was my refuge. It was music that first took me to the Gambia and to study with the master of the Kora, Amadou Bansang Jabati, when I was 10 years old. His family came from one of just 5 principal lineages from a guild of hereditary musicians known as griots that date back to the 13th century. I remember as a child leaving England in the dark, wintry morning snow and arriving in Africa to a ball of heat in the dead of night. Traveling across the Sahel over several days, we came to my teacher's village, where there was no electricity, no running water, no gas. It was a very rural existence, and the pace of life was much slower, but it gave one time to think and reflect. Though life was hard from day to day, it was one of the first places that really gave me a sense of belonging, where my inner and outer voice began to merge. Facing those daily challenges and realities gave me a different value system, and I really learned about the generosity of spirit and kingship. The journey changed my perception of the world, and I saw how music can open doors and carry you to new horizons. At 10, I was old enough to hear, but young enough to see. Amadou was over 80 when I began to study, and the griot tradition had been in his family for over 106 generations. Amadou was like a window into another world. He was a griot of the old code, and he embodied a connection with the past in his very essence. With his son Sanjali, I was encoded in these ways, and we learned that this is not just music but a way of life, and that music and culture are an integral fabric of society. There was a sense of history as a part of cultural expression. In parallel to learning the music of the Kora, I was also studying the cello and Western classical music. For years, I was studying both of these in complete isolation from one another and saw them as distinctly separate. How do you bring together a written tradition with an oral culture? What musical language do you use, and where are the reference points? It was a journey that took me through jazz, improvisation, theme and variation, and eventually to composition. It also brought me into collaborations with many musicians from all around the world as I searched for that universal truth in music that remains so mysterious and elusive. It was like following a thread that was always one step ahead. I loved the spontaneity of improvisation and the energy of question and answer, but I needed a musical universe to place all of this within. And suddenly, there was the gateway of composition. It was the only form that I could make sense of all these diverse worlds. A space where all these voices could be heard, but also given their own dominion. My first major work was entitled Cycle of Reckoning, and it marked a turning point. It was also the first piece ever written for Kora and symphony orchestra. For me, it was a culmination of all that had gone before, following all of my musical narrative. The piece revolved around reflections of an ancestral, elusive figure looking back over hundreds of years. It was a metaphorical, archetypal journey of exile, a story of the African diaspora, my story in a quest to find a place of belonging, a place that could be called home. Ironically, it was this very narrative of living between worlds that allowed me to forge my own identity. And rather than seeing it as a negation, I came to claim it as the essence of my journey, the path of a nomad. Someone once said to me, migration makes a man perfect, for we often have to travel to truly see what we have just left behind. Thank you.
Stay. So we just have about 30 seconds, but could you show us all about your instrument? Or at least a short bit about your instrument.
It's the 21-stringed West African harp lute, known as the Kora. That's the other side for those that didn't see it earlier. And it's from Senegal, Mali, Guinea, that region of West Africa.
Wow. And how long did it take you? I mean, you said in the talk, but just reiterate, how long did it take you to become a master?
I don't think I'm a master yet, but it takes a lifetime to become a master. But I've been studying it since I was 8, 9 years old.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm still studying it.
And do you just like go to the Quora store, like Quora.com, or did somebody build this for you?
No, the makers are actually within the family. So some are players and some are makers. So as I said, it's a hereditary tradition, and both the makers and the players are within that.
Wow. And do you have music that's available like on iTunes or for
Yeah,
people to
iTunes,
see?
in the bookstore.
Cool.
Here, yeah.
Thanks. Great to
Beautiful.
hear you.
Thank you. Thank you.